Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamanati Ravana Jadi Jamanati Ravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamanati Ravana Jadi Jamanati Ravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari 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 Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Continuing where the morning class is here at ISKCON Naperville, we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 14, texts 5 through 7. And because because this is live stream, I'm not going to recite the Sanskrit. I'll just read the English and purports. Nimittani. In course of time, it came to pass that people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, etc. Maharaj Yudhisthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother. Purport. Such a pious king as Maharaj Yudhisthira at once became perturbed when there were such inhuman symptoms as greed, anger, irreligiosity, and hypocrisy rampant in society. It appears from this statement that all these symptoms of degraded society were unknown to the people of the time, and it was astonishing for them to have experienced them with the advent of the Kali Yuga, or the age of quarrel. Text number 6. Maharaj Yudhisthira said to his younger brother, Bhimasena, I sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to meet his friends and to learn from the personality of Godhead Krishna of his program of work. No purport. Text 7. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going there. Did the internet get cut? Okay. So that's the morning verse. So we have, from these 3 verses, we have some understanding that, first of all, the age of Kali, even before Maharaj Parikshit became king, even while Maharaj Yudhisthira was still the king, the symptoms of the the age of Kali had begun. Now, I'm accustomed to hearing there's a juncture in between one yuga and the next yuga. Now, the way that Vedic time works is sometimes there's a juncture, sometimes there's even an overlap, etc. My understanding was there was a juncture, a sandhi, and Krishna's departure, of course, was while Arjuna was away. And while Arjuna was away, at least we know this much, 7 months had passed, because that's in the verse. So if it was a sandhi, it was a real short one, because the symptoms of Kali had already become manifested. And that's what, that's in the purport at least. All these symptoms of degraded society were unknown to the people of the time, and it was astonishing for them to have experienced them with the advent of Kali Yuga, or the age of quarrel. So it's a detail, but sometimes this question arises. When did Kali Yuga officially begin? When did the clock start? So shortly after the departure of Krishna. And it's like really shortly, because it's within 7 months. However short that was. Because during Krishna's presence, how can you have Kali Yuga? You can't. You can have the best of, even in Dwapara Yuga, when Krishna is present. Now, Krishna's presence, we know from the Bhagavatam, was marked by abundance and the maintenance of religious principles and the destruction of your religion and all those nice things that are found in the first chapter of Canto 1. By Krishna, just by the mark of Krishna's feet on earth, everything was auspicious and irreligiosity was dispelled. And the question was being asked by the sages, now that Krishna is gone, where will religious principles take shelter? And how will people receive the benefit of religious principles in this age of Kali? And of course, the answer is the Srimad Bhagavatam itself is the place to receive that protection of religious principles, etc. So in any case, Kali Yuga has begun during the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, even before they departed and turned the kingdom over to Maharaj Parikshit. And another point that we hear is, as the yugas progress, the standards of religious principles deteriorate. From all four are being upheld, and three are upheld, and two are upheld, and one is remaining. That one that's remaining in Kali is truthfulness, and that's also the leg of Dharma that the personality of Kali was beating on. Just yesterday evening, some of you may have participated, or some of you may not, but with the Chinese devotees, every other Wednesday evening, our time, Thursday morning, their time, there's a topic, and that's Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and out of Vrindavan. So the topic was the Shamataka jewel, and the topic, the lesson, one of the important lessons was what to do when you're falsely accused, because it happens. Or people start some rumor or say some things that are, whether it's intentional or unintentional, whatever, what do you do? And the answer, that was Dwarpa Yuga, is you stand by the truth. Truth will eclipse untruth. It will dismiss untruth. So stand by the truth. And then what are the behaviors of standing by the truth? That depends on the circumstance. But the truth was important in Dwarpa Yuga. Even in Dwarpa Yuga, untruth was being propagated. Even against Krishna, even in Dwarka. So what to speak of Kali Yuga? The bashing of that one principle without illustrating how untruth is so prevalent in modern society. What to speak of politics, but in society, untruth. So we stand by truth, and that was the one principle that was remaining, is remaining, compared to the other three legs. But we're hearing here not just truth, but other symptoms besides untruth. They were not, we're hearing, they were not known in Dwarpa Yuga, or at least during Krishna's presence for sure. And Krishna's presence was, by our standards, a long time. 125 years, that's a long time. And so people were accustomed to the absence of those things. Now there's this teaching that we were discussing last week in Houston. Conditioning is such that when substandards become the norm, one becomes a little numb to substandards, or what one becomes conditioned by the norm, and one just accepts illusion for reality, or the deterioration of the qualities of mankind is just the norm. And it's just like, okay. It's just like, okay. And, you look to the left, you look to the right, and that's the norm. So I'm quite okay. But it's not okay. That's Kali Yuga conditioning. And therefore, we have the light of the Bhagavad and other scriptures that teach us what standards are. Now, here, the details are not being presented in Canto 1, Chapter 14. It's just naming discrepancies. A meditation that I've been absorbed in of late, it's connected to this, is the theme for the Memorial Day weekend. By the way, the Memorial Day weekend isn't going to be in Gitanagari for various reasons. And instead, it's going to be in the Harmony Collective place in Ypsilanti, mainly virtual. In case you don't know about it, you can find out. And the theme is something like this: Vaishnava etiquette and authenticity. Can they coexist? Now, authenticity in our modern circumstance has so much to do with norms. The norms of, let's say, the norms of truthfulness, etc. And then, Kali Yuga, we have our bodies and minds, we have our psychophysical nature, and then if our psychophysical nature is pretty much in harmony with other psychophysical natures, that is to say, the standards of etiquette, then I'm just being myself, Prabhu. And if someone who's, especially younger generation people, I don't want to pick on younger generation people, older generation people are pretty stubborn too, but the desire for individuality and being yourself is it's a trend. It's a buzz. It's what people value today, and the world around us reinforces it. Don't be in anxiety. Be yourself. Just let it all hang out. Just be who you are. I am who I am. I think that's the name of a church. As you approach the Trite Temple, there's an approach street, and there's a church. I am who I am church. And it's true, we are who we are. And that's the self-honesty position. But the self-honesty position doesn't mean, now back to the Bhagavatam, it doesn't mean you just comply or stay with the norms of today. And you're a product of the norms of today. We all a product, to a degree, of the times in which we live. We're living in Kali Yuga, and so we're a product of the times in which we live. We're Kali Yuga people, where memory is short and compassion is diminished, and all those things that are spoken about the age of Kali in Canto 1, Chapter 1. Here's what we have in Canto 1, Chapter 14. Greed, anger, pride in the purport, irreligiosity, hypocrisy, etc. So those are norms. Let's take greed. What do we need? And take any one of those things. But that's a nice one. What do you need? And if it's more than what you need, but you feel you need it, what's that? What's that pushing force? It's greed. It's not reality. Anasaktasya vishayan yataram upayunjitaha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya uchate. So we have this yukta vairagya principle where we utilize things, yukta, we use things in Krishna service, thereby demonstrating detachment from the sense of proprietorship and enjoyership, because the two go together. Owning something and enjoying something. It's Krishna's property, and we accept those things meant for us, for our sustenance, our maintenance. Isabhasham teaching from Ishopanishad, you all know that teaching. So where do you draw the line? What do I need? That's a whole topic. So I don't want to get lost in that topic. But greed is more than what I need. And there's a tendency to accept more than what we need. It's a Kali Yuga tendency. And it's quite normal. We accept more than what we need. And we can become complacent and, routinized by our daily life, where we have our habits and our norms, and it's quite like everybody else, and one can remain stuck. We're going to be discussing this Memorial Day weekend, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about that, writes about that. In general, what are the steps? If there must be some desire, or say it stronger, there must be some enthusiasm to go the next step from where we are. One of the things that I'm speaking because I've been preparing, I've been immersed in this topic. There's a kind of, a stagnation is indifference. I'm okay, you're okay. I'm okay. I'm not okay, but I'm okay. And it's not necessary to feel like disturbed or troubled at heart or one of those kinds of emotions to want to progress. It's not like you have to hit bottom before you start going up again. The acceptance and progress, that whole topic we discussed at length in one of our retreats in Gitanagari. I can accept that I'm a conditioned soul and it's Kali Yuga, and these forces are influencing me, and on the topic of greed, I may have more than what I require. Now what do I do about it? We don't just start throwing things away, give it a bad name and chuck it. We strengthen our bhakti and reevaluate again and again, do I really need? And if I don't really need, then in charity you give something you don't really need, and you regularly give charity because you don't really need. And somebody that doesn't have, then they may utilize something in Krishna service, and that's how we live our life, trying to simplify always, just on the greed topic. But back to this little section, these symptoms, greed, anger, hypocrisy, etc., were unknown. Now, there is certainly hypocrisy in Dwapara Yuga, just like last night. Satrajit. It was, I'm good and Krishna's bad. Or Duryodhana, I'm good and Krishna's bad. Hypocrisy. And the Pandavas are bad. There were such things. during Krishna's time. But they stood out like a sore thumb, and Krishna dealt with them. Krishna removed that hypocrisy and the pride, etc., from Satyajit's heart, the hard way. He tried the soft way. Anyway, the symptoms of Kali accelerated after Krishna's departure because the removal personality, Krishna himself, the agent of purification for all, not just his devotees, but those that were not his devotees, Krishna was the purifying agent for all. And now, the very intelligent Maharaj Yudhisthira understands these symptoms. A thing is known by its, using Prabhupada's terms, by characteristics. Something is known by its characteristics. And adharma is a characteristic of Krishna's absence. And he's seeing adharma, unlike the levels of adharma before. So that characteristic intuitively tells him, or deductively tells him, it's been 7 months. And not a message at all from Arjuna. That's another symptom or characteristic. It's not like he's my younger brother, I sent him on a mission, we haven't heard anything from him for 7 months. And as somebody, they didn't have, communication methodologies like today, but the messenger could have come from Arjuna to Yudhisthira because he sent him for a mission. He's the king, and he's the king's brother, and very obedient to his elder brother. He sent him on a mission, no message. That's a symptom of something. That's what this section is now describing. And he didn't want to say it. And he didn't even want to explicitly think it because it was too painful. That avoidance thing. But he knew it, deductively and intuitively. Just like in the section of the Bhagavatam, the Uddhava Gita section, Uddhava knew Krishna is going to depart. In one sense, even before sending Yudhisthira, even before Yudhisthira sending Arjuna, the Pandavas understood. Because they're so dear to Krishna. They understood intuitively. You can say, super soul, but intuitively, they understood. That's why he sent Arjuna. What's Krishna's plan? Arjuna was happy to go be with Krishna. And spending 7 months isn't necessarily something bad. He was enjoying Krishna's association with some message, please. And bad omens, it means, what was understood. Krishna has departed. And we're going to hear something further about the symptoms of the age of Kali beginning, and Maharaj Yudhisthira is detecting. Now we can understand these things in part from Scripture, but when we understand Scripture, then we can understand things. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna, devotees on Zoom call. If any of you have a question, you can unmute yourself. Ask. Otherwise, then move on to the local devotees here. There's a question from Radha Kunj Bihari Prabhu. Prabhu, would you like to ask? Want me to read it?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj.
Speak slowly.
Okay, Maharaj, I will speak as slowly as possible. So you spoke about upayunjate and how we should dedicate ourselves. Question about atyahara. How do I understand atyahara principle? As a householder, do I accept what is enough for only today, or do I store something for my retirement life also? How much is too much? Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
You, as a householder, you are obliged to take care of retirement today. And how much is enough, and where's the line of too much? That's going to vary from person to person. Just like the standards by which you live today and the standards by which another devotee on the screen here lives today is going to be different. So the standard of what is needed is there's no measuring stick other than this one that I am aware of, and that is where you can be peaceful. And at the same time, you're trying to minimize. So be peaceful means your attention is not endlessly distracted by, I need more, I need more, I need more. And on the other side, you're trying to simplify. So, a really nice example that I think of often is Ambarish Prabhu, Henry Ford's grandson. He inherited wealth from his family, from Henry Ford. So he had very substantial wealth. And I've been to his home in Florida, and it's a very simple home. It's nice, but it's not a mansion. It's not gaudy, and it's simple, nice, adequate, and he lives his life in that style. Although he has capacity to live extravagantly, he's living with his wife, and by now their children are grown up and I believe married. So he lives quite simply. And after the demise of his mother, there was some property in Maine, the state of Maine, and so it was passed on to him. And so he goes there in the summers because it's really hot in Florida. But before then, he just stayed in Florida. And, he lives and whatever extra, he used that for the TOVP, and he uses, et cetera, et cetera. So he's a really nice example of what's needed. The Yukta Vairagya principle, or anasaktasya, that's key, without attachment. Asakti means attachment, and anasakti means without attachment. And without attachment to what? Vishaya, sense enjoyment. So when you can accept something and utilize it, in fact, utilize it in Krishna service and not be the enjoyer, as a Vishayi will do, become the enjoyer of the objects, then you're okay. And you're always, always, always looking to simplify. Do I really need this? Or do I really need 6 of those? Or etc. And you look to simplify. Now, the specific question was retirement, and the same principle applies. Now, what is it that I need? And there's uncertainty even in those circumstances, because who knows what. So, but what is it that I need to remain peaceful not as the Vishayi, but, maintain myself in Krishna consciousness and occasionally visit the holy dham because that costs something, and as a vanaprastha, visit holy places and that costs something, and so forth. So, for Krishna service, and with simplicity, without the mood of being an enjoyer. And what Ambarish Prabhu has and requires may be different than another person. Those are principles to consider.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
We have some questions in the room here. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This is not directly related to this topic, but from this chapter, one question has been coming, Guru Maharaj, in our discussions in the mornings. Vidura advising Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and I think Queen Kunti also followed them to Himalayas, and apparently the description is given as they were performing Ashtanga Yoga. So we are trying to understand Vidura being a pure devotee of the Lord. So either the Yuga Dharma, which is the deity worship, or chanting the holy names of the Lord. Just want to hear from you how that's connected to the practices they were doing, Guru Maharaj.
That's a different chapter. That's chapter 13. Oh, the previous chapter. Well, it doesn't say he didn't chant. It doesn't say he didn't worship. But he's preparing to leave his body at the using Prabhupada's expression, the fag end of life. And my understanding goes like this, that in Dwapara Yuga, the kings were all trained in this Ashtanga Yoga process, and specifically the purpose in the mature stage was to concentrate the mind, withdraw pratyahara, withdraw the senses from sense activity, that is, the internal sense, from the objects of the senses, in the mood of doing some service or doing some work. So it's a consolidation of consciousness, and then the next three stages of concentration of the mind. See, he's preparing to leave. So he's not doing deity worship in preparing to leave. Now, when we hear the instructions given by Narada Muni to Dhruva, the yuga is Satya Yuga, but he gives him all kinds of teachings, including worshipping a deity form and other things that are not yuga specific. Chanting of the name, it's not yuga specific, but these principles apply to all yugas. There's the principal means of deliverance, but this practice of concentrating the mind was known by kings. Kshatriyas knew, in addition to the skills of warfare, they also knew Ashtanga Yoga and how to concentrate and fix the mind. So the purpose, specifically, the purpose was to leave his body with his mind fixed. So did he do Yoga Dharma during his lifetime? We don't hear anything about deity worship by the Pandavas even, what to speak of Dhritarashtra and his sons. but it is Dwapara Yuga, and he was an elevated personality, blinded by his attachment to his son and his own idea of being the king, blinded, but obviously to take that instruction of Vidura and turn himself into by his fire of concentration, his body burst into flames. How powerful was his concentration? How powerful was his so the purpose was detachment and fixing the mind in transcendence. That was the purpose, and he was able to fulfill it. Because, in fact, he was an exalted person, although bewildered by his own attachments.
This is from Atulya Mataji. Similar to the message for today's class, I heard in another of your class is that the goal of life is to know yourself, free from duplicity, etc. Kindly elaborate on knowing oneself and where does it begin?
Where does it begin?
Yeah. At what level? The soul, mind, intelligence, body, bodily needs?
The whole deal. It says where it begins. And it's consummated by all of those have their rest and source of emanation in Krishna, so it's incomplete without Krishna realization. To know yourself must include Krishna realization, otherwise it's incomplete. But the Sanskrit word Atma, when you hear Prabhupada explaining this, Atma, it has all these different meanings that you just mentioned. It certainly means the soul, but it can mean the body, it can also mean the mind, because that's Atma, that's the self. So the holistic picture includes all of them. And to know yourself means to know how to properly, the connection between the body, the connection between the mind, and the connection between the soul and the source. Then is complete. So where does it begin? Different people are going to begin on this level or that level or another level. Commonly it begins on the physical. Then, subtle physical, and then value physical, and then gradually approaching transcendence. So know yourself has all those different stages. The question is, where does it begin? It begins with all of them, and, different persons begin with more emphasis on this or that or the other stage. Next. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.